Hello and welcome, Exiles, to the 1 week update to the Bloodmage. Obviously, this character has gone a long ways from its starter league start gear to now demigod status. I would want to say this character, I understand, is very expensive right now, and I'm going to be working on a fully fleshed out guide that tells you how to start it at a much cheaper price, the progression steps, compiling all the information for the various updates and the various things I learned as I played the character. So that's going to be in the works. It's going to take me a while. So in the meantime, I'll probably do maybe one more update video just showcasing that this build can be played with a bunch of different skills, and there's a lot of different ways you can use this character to just make spells work. Its scaling is just bananas. So that's the plan, and now let's go in game and go over the current setup. Welcome to the in-game portion of the video, and the first thing I'm going to start out with is the wild charge chains. I got asked about it a million times. It was driving me insane yesterday, so I'm going to cover this right here, right now, and settle it. The wild charge chains made it so if you proc wild shards, which I'll try to proc it real quick here to showcase it, we'll shoot in a spiral pattern. This is obviously very bad for damage. However, you can overwrite this targeting behavior. If you looked at any of the opening clips of this video, just go back and watch them right now if you didn't see it. I always started the fight when I wanted to have wild charge shoot at the enemy, I casted a fireball. The reason being is if your most recent skill was not a wild charge proc, it overwrites the targeting behavior for Ember Fusillade. It says, oh, we're shooting skills like a normal person. It's like this sort of thing where the game keeps track of, was your most recent cast a wild charge? If yes, shoot in circle. If your most recent cast was not a wild charge proc, target the enemy. So the way it is working here is you can always force the wild charge procs, even when you generate them, to still do targeting behavior as normal. So while you're in maps, while you're doing content, you do, I'm going to cast my thing, I'm going to save up my shots, and then, you mix in fireball. Same gameplay you should be doing already in mapping, which is weaving in fireballs with your Ember Fusillade whenever you get to full stack, so the Ember Fusillade has time to shoot out. Because obviously, if you just constant cast, your fireball has, or your Ember Fusillade will never actually go off. Right now, I don't have the mana or the life sustain because I haven't built it up, but you get the idea. As you cast, Ember Fusillade can't shoot itself until you give it time to cast. So in that meantime, might as well shoot a fireball. It's good clear. So the big thing that changed here is I decided to swap out Nova for wild chards on fireball, because if you hit that 20%, 25% to proc wild chards, then your fireball will count as a wild charge proc and you won't get the correct targeting. So to avoid this inconsistency, Nova has been working great, and quite frankly, I think I'm liking it more than wild chards in general, just because it's consistently always some good extra clear when you cast it. And then I'm using Scion's Temper to have consistent extra proj generation, and it's working perfectly. Now, if you don't like that option, if you just want to go pure single target, this works if you're going to Tula's, which is Heft is a really good fizz support, for example, because it has a good multiplier in terms of mana cost, which gives us more damage, and it has a damage multiplier. So you can do that if you want to go for a bigger single target one shot on a boss. But ultimately, Scion's Temper, in my opinion, just feels so dang good for proj generation. Speaking of proj generation and the character as a whole, you'll notice we have about close to 7k life now, which is a big 700 HP change, which is due to a tree change. We also picked up quite a bit more damage. And what was that tree change, you might ask? Well, the game is starting to look, this might be, okay, listen, I know, this is a disgusting looking tree, but hear me out. Hear me out. It's efficient, okay? You may not like it, but this is peak efficiency. And the reason for that is, honestly, the biggest selling point is this right here. Chill immunity. One of the few map mods that could actually deter this character, one of the few map mods I'd look at and be like, that's a problem, is chilled ground. Or, for example, if you get gain cold, you'd get chilled a lot. This negates that, and your character feels fast all the time. Granted, there's still temp chains, so we don't have a solution for that, but this solves something that was way more common in my opinion. Chilled ground or enemies with gain extra cold, you'd get chilled a lot, and it just negates that. So upside number one of the tree change is chill immunity. Upside number two is obviously we've gained more life through this node, 5% life, 5% movement speed, a bit more speed on the tree, and we have gained more damage. So our character got tankier because it got about 700 additional life with the tree change, more damage, I'd say about 20-25% more damage, and chill immunity. So these are the benefits. The downsides, the cons of also we don't need From Nothing Jewel with this pathing because we path right next to it. So if you were thinking about saving up for that jewel and you swap to this tree, technically you can grab it without that. So there's that upside as well. The downside is we lost a bit of our regen rate. which you make up for that some by having a higher life, which means you have higher life costs, which means you have higher net regen. So you make up for some of the regen. I don't think this is too much of a downside from what I've noticed. It feels pretty good. You obviously lose a little bit of cast speed from Arcane Surge. So there's that, like about 25% cast speed while mapping. So take that with how you will. And then the bigger change is the loss of extra projectiles. So it's a loss in a bit of cast speed, a bit of regen, and extra projectiles. I was already running tech rods here anyways, which was negating these projectile clusters, but we lose this 32% for extra 2 proj. Now, in my opinion, after the swap to Nova Fireball and doing Scions on the Ember Fusillade, I gotta be honest, I didn't really feel like this was too much of a loss after the tree change. After one map, I was sold on this tree change. I move faster. I don't care about chilled ground. I deal more damage. This feels great. So ultimately, I would say this is a positive tree change. You can't do it until you're a higher level. You need to be able to afford the passives to stretch out over here. I would say if you're level 80, you want to stick towards the tree that's more condensed over here with high density of power. But as you get higher level, you can look at this tree change. One thing that is contingent on this tree change and why the damage ended up being better after the fact is because we were able to socket in double crit multi-jewels onto our tree. We have a lot of extra jewel sockets we gained from this tree respec, and that's where it makes up for the damage loss of losing this crit wheel, for example. We lost this crit bonus damage. We needed to make that up somewhere, and we made it up with crit bonus jewels. So a lot of crit bonus, double crit bonus jewels is how we did it. So that is the big overall change of the character, is the crit bonus jewels and swapping to a higher life scaling tree. Another thing you may notice is we're wearing a Headhunter. Quite frankly, after trying it out, there's just no other belt slot in the game that competes with this. Unfortunately for PoE1, it suffers from the fact that no belts are really good. So in the 0.1 patch, Ingenuity would just blow everything out of the water. I think in the 0.3 patch, this is the patch of the Headhunter. Ingenuity no longer is very efficient because it has like such a low multiplier on rings, so it can't compete at all. It's, comparable to a good rare belt if it's a really min-maxed roll. And then outside of that, there's just not really any good belt slots in this game. And the thing, Headhunter, now that it has the 60-second bonus, and there's a lot more rare monsters in the game, a lot more juice in the game, this just makes this the go-to choice. And quite frankly, after playing it, the character felt a lot faster. The big downside of it is you occasionally have the Shroud Walker or something. There's this buff that makes you teleport. It kind of jerks your character around a bit. I'd say it feels like I get it in like 20% of maps, 30% of maps, something like that. I don't know. It's a little bit annoying. That's the one downside. But then the upside is you appear to be, as far as I can tell, getting consistent movement speed buffs, DR buffs. It just seems like it's the way to go. To get this onto the character, I had to force a lot more res onto some other gear pieces. Everything's getting a little bit tight res-wise, considering we have a unique here, unique here, unique here, unique here, and none of them have res. But that's sort of the name of the game when you're trying to force on every min-max piece of gear. Every other gear piece gets a little bit tighter in terms of res. So yeah, that was the other big change we made. Lastly, I want to mention, because I don't think I had this slot on previously, is also we've added Unleash into the build. And you might say, Unleash has 50% less damage while recurring. Doesn't that give you a damage loss? Like say you generate up your stacks. Doesn't that give you a damage loss for the projectiles that shoot out? Not really. And the reason being is Unleash has the highest mana multiplier in the game, and Atula's gives damage based on how much life cost. So what Unleash ends up doing is it makes you have more life cost, which makes you be able to get more net sustain because your life cost a lot. And on top of that, it also smooths out the consistency of the build. When you get an Unleash proc, a lot of times that will fill in the gaps where you don't get a Scion's Temper proc, if you understand what I'm saying. Like sometimes you get Scion's Temper, sometimes you get Unleash, you weave it all together. It ends up feeling like consistently you're getting a lot of your max proj. And on top of that mana multiplier, you of course get the benefit of your character gets to scale very high regen as you're running through those maps. You're getting crazy numbers of sustain. This paired with Defiance of Destiny, you die very little times. The only thing I've really died to on this character right now is there is a debuff that a rare monster can put on you that disables all recovery or something. It's like a desecrated ground or something. I think it's one of the abyss mobs, maybe. Usually it's one of those things they reserve for like uber serious trying to have like a enrage mechanic on the fight where it forces you to, hey, you either have to play perfectly or you have to kill this boss fast or you're just going to outright lose to this disabling recovery mechanic. But they put it on a random rare you can encounter in any random map. So not necessarily a fan of that, but that's the one thing this character can die to. There's this mechanic that could turn off all recovery, but that's going to kill any build. If you stand still and have your recovery disabled, you're just going to get chipped down. For the most part, you can kind of just play around it. You kind of see when it starts occurring to your character. And we're just trucking through to level 96 right now on the build. So that should cover all of the big changes we made to the character as a whole in this most recent edition of the build. As for people that are just looking at the build now, wondering about starting the build, I'm going to try to answer some basic things. One here is the gear slots we have here. This is just showcasing, hey, you're league starting and you're doing Essence Drain. That's what Act 1 to 3 is. I did this as a leveling setup because I was league starting it. If you want to start this build late and you got twink leveling gear, you can go put some 5 links on all of your gem sockets. By all means, you can go straight to playing Ember Fusillade plus Fireball and level with it, because if you have all this extra gear, you can kind of ignore the downside where your character's weak in Act 1, because your character isn't weak in Act 1. You have a bunch of gear to support it, and you could play the build right away. The reason I suggested Essence Drain start is because this was a league starter, and when you don't have good gear, Ember Fusillade, Fireball, those sorts of things, they're just kind of weak to start out with compared to Essence Drain. It has a much better start. So that was the idea. That was why we have Act 1 through 3 gear. That's why we have Essence Drain leveling items. That was just because this was a league start plan and I wanted to showcase that. Then you have your Act 4 gear, your initial Bloodmancer setup going to life stacking. And this is following the progression of the various days where I upgraded my character all the way to my endgame gear. So that's what's going on there. As for the link skills, I showcased the link skills as I changed different things to give you some level of granular progression. But ultimately, the TLDR is endgame gems is the one I'd recommend looking at for the most part outside of Ember Fusillade using Atulis. Until you have Atulis, you are doing like Fire Mastery as a support, for example. And another thing I want to take note of, I am trying to force in extra mana multiplier. So Unleash might feel good with Atulis and Tech Rods when you have this sustain, but it's not going to feel good before you have Tech Rods because you don't have the sustain. So keep that in mind. Until you get Atulis, Unleash doesn't necessarily make sense. So that's one of the things that would change. Whereas, for example, Fireball, after playing with it, Nova just feels right compared to some of the earlier setups. And then something that I'm probably going to get a lot of questions about here is, why do you have Bind Spectre, Spark, Arc, Essence Drain? You'll notice we have a bunch of random gems that are seemingly not useful for the character. And the reason they seem not useful for the character is because they aren't useful for the character. These aren't relevant for the build whatsoever. What I did is I went through and bought the cheapest 6 links on trade, because a 6-link Jeweler Orb is about 50x. And each of these gems cost me about 10x. They're mostly like bricks with minus levels or minus qualities. Yeah, you see, they're all kind of like bricks. And what I'm using them for is enabling this node right here. You need 10 red supports for 5% life, 10 green supports for 5% movement speed. You can see this even on my character sheet. If I were to take out my red gem here, take out another one, there you go. You'll notice we dropped to 6,700 life. So you can see the difference. You can see when we pop that in, that's giving us the 5% life. So these are here just to generate the movement speed and the life. And of course, we want to make sure int is our highest number of gems. So we socketed in some extra int gems as well to activate the chill immunity, because it feels oh so good. So that's what's going on there on this. And then for the passive tree, hopefully I've ironed out the kinks with the trees. There's been some issues with some of the trees not registering some things. For example, this tree right here, max roll, the update, whenever I click like the save update or whatever, it feels like it randomly unspecs some things. Like, for example, the From Nothing Jewel is not allocating the recovery nodes that are supposed to be right here. And sometimes I've been noticing the ascendancies on the tree will randomly have like one node unspec'd. So if you see something like that, I apologize. The max roll has been bugging out a little bit with that stuff. But for right now, it should be mostly right on the trees. I went through the ascendancy points and re-clicked them all, so hopefully it doesn't go and unupdate them like it's done a few different times for me. So that's what's going on here. This is just giving you linear progression all the way up to around Act 3 in terms of Essence Drain. And then this is just for if you were leveling Essence Drain. Ultimately, you can look at a tree start like this if you have Twink leveling gear to go straight to Ember Fusillade and start specking out damage nodes that are just relevant for Ember Fusillade if you want to start going to it right away. Alrighty, that should cover the big changes and the current thing going on with the planner. I am going to be working on a written guide, which I will try to detail and iron out a lot more concrete. This is how you should start the character. This is the good gems to go for, and slim down the information overload that is in this planner, because this planner is a conglomerate of a lot of snapshots of my progression, and that's not necessarily a congruent or like cohesive progression where there's a lot more extra steps of like, oh, I changed this, realized I didn't like that, and then changed this. You know what I mean? Like there's some level of like swapping back and forth on things. So that's what I'm going to be working on. It's going to take me a decent amount of time to get the full guide together and have it all like coherent and make sense. You get the idea. In the meantime, I will be probably showcasing how you can take this character and basically pick whatever spell you want and do pretty much all content. Because the way I see it, this character has just ridiculously overpowered scaling. Wrathpith combined with the Atuli support and life scaling is just basically no matter what skill you click, you're gonna do damage. It's just that crazy. And then you combine Tech Rod's Defiance, things like this. Your sustain, your survivability just goes through the roof. So you have good damage on whatever skill you want to play and good survivability on whatever you want to play. So I'm just going to showcase maybe how you could do pretty much whatever skill you want. So that's maybe what I'm going to work on today, is putting together a more generic setup, like a +4 all wand, and then I'll showcase a bunch of different skill setups. I think that'd be kind of a fun video. And that'll be kind of just in the meantime while I'm working on a fully written guide and making sure I'm getting it peer reviewed and stuff, so it's actually well written. That's the plan. Hopefully you guys enjoy. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and peace out. Have a good one.